There was this driver who had this theory that if you drop food on the ground, you should pick it up and eat it. And we sort of both thought he was weird and thought he was onto something.
You eat a Dorito and your gut bacteria is like, what the hell is this? Let me call in like immune cells to figure out what that is. So that's called inflammation, because now your immune cells are like trying to figure out what this thing is. Send signals to your brain like, hey, we have something here that we don't even recognize as food. That's why ultra processed food, if you eat a lot of them, your brain feels tired and sad.
From Arizona, internal medicine physician and nutritionist, Dr. Amy Shah.
Teach you all the tips and tricks about nutrition, wellness, and medicine.
Hunger, your gut, your microbiome, how all of that stuff's connected so you can live better with more energy, with better sleep. There's some really cool stuff we're going to cover today with Dr. Amy Shah.
Dr. Amy Shah.
Dr. Amy Shah.
Dr. Amy Shah, welcome to the show.
People that live on farms, have animals, are dirtier, like have more exposure to dirt. They have stronger immune systems than people who live in big cities. That is what was so shocking to people. Is like, wait, how does that even make sense?
You know, Kelly and I grew up in the 70s and 80s and no one was allergic to anything, literally. Like,
Yes.
Definitely there was no kid that was allergic to a nut. Nobody was allergic to anything. Where we are with allergies, how does this connect to the gut and ultra processed food and circadian rhythms and all the things we've been talking about? Dr. Amy Shah, we are really excited to have you today on the Ready State podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
We, just for full transparency, everyone, it's going to sound like we know Dr. Shah a little bit because we were just on her podcast. And so we're going to get into it a little bit more today. And I'm very excited. And I want to start by saying, or just setting the framework for our listeners. I don't meet many double board certified physicians who happen to be experts in internal medicine and immunology, because that
and
really
nutrition
that
and
sets,
allergy.
That's right. We're going to get there because that sets the tone a little bit for some of the things we're going to talk about that are real blind spots for people, I think, around gut health and how the gut maybe impacts, I don't know, everything that we're talking about. I think people hear that a little bit. But tell us a little bit of your journey, because it's not typical for physicians, classically trained physician, and you are very much a classically trained physician with your bona fides being as top-notch as they can be. How do you start to rectify this classical education with, maybe I'm going to have to extend outside of the office? Because that's really where we can have these 6-minute conversations with our patients, but they're just insufficient. And it's not like, sometimes we've discovered that the physician and the physician room isn't the right place to talk about all these lifestyle interventions. So talk a little bit about your journey, because you are a total savage and are doing amazing things in getting people into sort of health and owning their own health at home. But talk about that transition for me, because I think that really sets up the call today.
Yeah. Thank you, first of all. So I think the real roots of this, and I know we've talked offline about this, but my parents brought me to America when I was 5 years old because they thought it would give me a better life than our little village that they were from in India. And as soon as we got here, about a year or two, I remember this. My dad and his 5 brothers all got diagnosed with diabetes type 2. And they were these thin 30-something-year-old guys. I mean, a couple of them were in their 40s and some of them were in their 30s. My dad was in his 30s. And it started the conversation of, why did this happen? What does food actually do? How are people's bodies different than other people's? Like, there's people who eat tons. I remember thinking, like, there's people who eat tons of sugar that don't have diabetes. How come, like, so that kind of questioning was something that was really rampant in our home. And we didn't get any guidance. There was no nutritionist. There was no guidance from the doctors. It was just like, you have diabetes. And it was always like, don't eat too much sugar was like the translation. And there was no talk about like, what should you eat? What are carbs? Like, what actually spikes your blood sugar? What, could worsen things. And so I think back to that now and I'm like, gosh, if he had been armed with the knowledge of the things that he could be doing proactively, his whole trajectory would have been different. And mine would have been different too. So I decided to go to nutrition school for undergrad to learn kind of more about medicine and nutrition. But it's so funny. I was in my like third year of nutrition school, and there was like a career center, and I was like, okay, what can I do like after a nutrition degree? And they were like, Not much." There's like you could be a hospital dietitian, or you could be like a private practice nutritionist, both of which I think the dietitian in the hospital at that time would make like 25 to $30,000 a year. And I thought to myself, wow, there's like two two jobs that I could get, and I shadowed a hospital dietitian, like, that person was, like, prescribing, like, TPN, which is, parenteral nutrition, like IV nutrition for, patients, and it is an amazing thing, but that was not what I was imagining. Like, I was thinking more on this lines of, like, diabetes, heart disease, how did we optimize our lives? And so I was like, "Okay, I need to go to med school." And I went to med school, and I did all this training, and I came out, and there's 0 job options for nutrition and medicine again. And so I think what I realized is and it was so sad because it's, like, 20 years of training, and I started my first day, and it was 24 patients, and there was absolutely 0 time to talk about nutrition or health or anything, but just getting them in and out, like you said, like 6 minutes, right? And so I realized at that point that this was it was kinda disheartened and feeling like, "Wow, I really don't love what I do, and I really don't love how I feel," because I was also, like, not doing the things that I needed to be doing to take care of my own health and mindset. And so that's how I learned. It's like from being in a terrible place and like everybody on the outside being like, "Oh, you made it. You're done with all this amazing." And I'm like, "No, but I actually hate my life and who I am." So that's like how I kind of
Congratulations. Here's the anchor you get to carry
Yeah.
around.
I just like,
yeah.
I'd love to go back to your dad for a second because I am wondering, did you all think then or now or in between now and then that the reason that he was diagnosed or got type 2 diabetes was because of the switch to a more traditional Indian diet to a standard American diet? Was that discussed then? Was that not something? Do you now think that that was the cause? You know, how did that all happen?
Yeah, in retrospect, and all in retrospect, right? Because you can see it clearly now. You come to America, you're living the immigrant life, you're working 2 jobs. He was studying for his master's at night. He stopped walking, he stopped eating fresh home cooked food because now my mom was working as well to try to, get off the ground. And their life was completely different. And I remember, you know, when we looked back at it, we were like, "Oh, obviously that's what happened." But at the time, it really wasn't clear because as you
It
know,
wasn't clear.
everyone ate like that and everyone moved very little. And so it was like, well, like and he even said, then once he started to learn a little bit more about diabetes, he started to pick up his uh, tennis racket. Like he used to play before, but now he had stopped for years and started to exercise. And absolutely, looking back at it, it's like so clear what was happening, but not at the time. At the time, they
You all
didn't
did
know.
not have multiple generations of Western European
Yeah.
sedentary behavior,
To
epigenetics
buffer,
working
yeah,
for you. That's
to
right.
buffer that. So I think that leads me perfectly into what I would love to discuss with you. And we, of course, have touched on this topic a billion times with other, health people and nutritionists on our podcast, but I don't think we've ever done a deep dive into it. And that is ultra processed foods. Now, this, I think, talk about a buzzword. I think even 5 years ago, nobody said the words ultra processed food. I mean, I think it was more standard American diet, and there were other ways to sort of describe this universe of foods that are often made in a lab. The only real data I know is that we're eating too many of them. I do know that most kids, their diet is comprised of 70% ultra processed foods. But what are these ultra processed foods doing to us?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because we don't even know all the things they're doing to us. We know that they're making us sad. The people who have the highest intake of ultra processed foods also report the most days of sadness and anxiety. We know that it's linked with mortality, early death. We know that it's linked to diseases like cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes. And it's so funny because We just know that these foods do that. We don't even know what part of the food really does that. And that's the big debate. Is it
I think the
like, what
Dorito
is it?
part.
Yeah, the cheese, the fake cheese part. So like it's really difficult to create better for you products that are convenient in a way, because if you're putting any of these kind of stabilizers, emulsifiers, we don't even know which one it is to take it out. So we have to take it all out to actually not have an ultra processed food. And so it's become really difficult. So an ultra processed food, for those that don't know, there is an actual medical definition for it. It is a food that has ingredients in it that don't exist in a culinary setting. So even if you had every spice and every ingredient in the world at your disposal, you could not make it. And so that makes a lot of sense. Like, yeah, you have every ingredient. You can't make an Oreo. You can't make um, a Dorito, for example.
I have a
Like,
jar of titanium dioxide. I don't know what you're talking about.
you can't, like, it's impossible. So I think that made it so clear what an ultra processed food is for me. But then how do you even get rid of these? Because as you know, our protein powders, our, healthy snacks, a lot of them are ultra processed. And so it becomes really difficult.
One of the things that really resonates with me about your work is that I really feel like you take this systems approach to someone's health and well-being. And that it's great. We're trying to get people to eat more whole foods and get fiber and nutrient density. Yes. But you're also sort of become a gut whisperer. And I feel like probiotics had a moment. And then because I'm, have my finger on the pulse, I'm like, oh, it's not probiotics, it's something else, right? But
Yeah.
you have really found, and I have plenty of friends who are like, you have to eat a probiotic food. And human beings have been doing this for a long, long time. You sort of, we'll talk about some of your other aspects of this, but start to explain how you're a new formal nutrition training, you're a physician, board certified, but how do you get to the gut through immunology? Because that seems like such an obvious connection now in retrospect, knowing what we know, but it's less obvious and not necessarily the first thing that we present. You have bad allergies, you've got some skin thing. Let's talk about what's happening in your intestines. I think that's a big step for people. Can you kind of walk us through that a little bit and how that becomes really a keystone of the way you're thinking about trying to have people live better lives?
All right, you're going to love this because you talk so much about this. But so when I was in fellowship, fellowship means like after med school, after training, you do this extra training. That was my immunology. And yeah, it's like ridiculous. So I'm sitting in this room and we're doing journal club. And journal club just means that you take an article in the literature, in the scientific literature, and you talk about it. And you won't believe the articles that we were talking about that day. It was about how people that live on farms, have animals, are dirtier, like have more exposure to dirt, and farming. They have stronger immune systems than people who live in big cities that are cleaner, richer. And this was part of this hygiene hypothesis that happened at the turn of the century in London, because they found that the people that were moving into London, the rich people, the industrialized groups that were working in the factories, their children were getting sicker, they were getting allergies, and their immune system wasn't as strong as the farm kids. And that is what was so shocking to people, is like, wait, how does that even make sense? But that's why I love telling this story, because for you, you're like, obviously the farm kids had a better immune system and like got but I don't think that was obvious to most people at the time. Like they were like, wait, what's happening in their gut? What's happening to their immune system? So what I found out is that the gut and the immune system and the brain are constantly talking to each other. And especially in that 0 to 5 age range, They are constantly learning, and they need to see a lot of things to learn. And so kids who had a lot of bacteria in their lives, a lot of people in their lives, a lot of animals in their lives that were moving, that were getting dirty, that were like seeing sunlight, their immune systems were functioning properly, and they had a great gut microbiome, and they had great mental health. And then there's these kids that we think are more advanced and cleaner, and they get like everything is like perfect to perfection, and they're actually having issues. And so that was a big discussion that week in that journal club. And I was like, everything just started to make sense to me, because now that you look back at it, like I say, for you and for me now, it's just obvious that's true. But at that time, that was not obvious at all. And it was like a very new field of research about, oh, we didn't know that the gut microbiome talks to the immune system and talks to the brain. Like, this is all new.
By the way, when
Go ahead.
when our kids were little, I actually worked years ago as a river rafting guide, and there was this driver who had this theory that you should, if you drop food on the ground, you should eat it and pick it up off the ground and eat it. And his whole theory, this was like in the early 90s, and he was not medically trained in any way, but he was like,
River Gut Science.
but he was like, you need to eat stuff that falls on the floor because you want to get all the bacteria and that it's going to strengthen your immune system. And we sort of both thought he was weird and thought he was onto something. So that was the first time. But when my kids were in elementary school, I would tell them to, when they were told to go use the hand sanitizer, I was like, just go over there, but then just pretend like you're pumping the hand sanitizer on your hand, but just don't do it because you just want to be exposed to it all. And I'm sure they still did it some of the time, but anyway.
I mean, there's an amazing study, the pacifier study, and it was done in Europe because I think people would get like sent to CPS in America. But it was like, if your child's pacifier fell on the ground, the mom would take it and lick it. If you were in a place like out and about, it was normal to just like clean it off, and they would give it back to the baby. And they found in that study that the moms who did that, their babies had better, stronger immune systems and microbiomes than the ones that did the whole sanitizing thing. So I think that kind of goes with what your river guide
I love it.
was saying.
I got to find that study. So
Go ahead.
Okay.
Well, let me just say
Please.
first of all, as I think about all the kids born in Star Wars, in those on the Death Star, it's like it's immaculate, and there's
they
no
were
way.
very sickly.
That's right. So if we're going to Mars and the Death Star, there's no way that those kids have functional
Yeah.
immune systems. That's number one that thinks that.
Yes.
You know, one of the things that I try to do every day with Caroline, she's our superstar water polo goalie, and I figured out that if I make her breakfast to take, she can get about a half hour more sleep. And so I just started making her breakfast, but I also found out I could control what she had for breakfast. And one of the things that I try to do every single day is have some fermented food. Am I on the right path with that thinking? It could be a chobani, it could be a shot of yogurt. It didn't have to be much, but thinking about fermented food. And this actually goes along with the Instagram thing I just showed you about the Korean business lunch. And the number of fermented foods they ate in a single setting was astounding.
Well, and let me ask a sub question there, because I do think this fermented food thing is important. But sub question, I'm assuming all fermented foods are not created equal, because one of the things Kelly just mentioned is something that our daughter loves, which are these Costco chobani fermented yogurt things. So I'm assuming
You're saying big fermentation?
I'm just going to go with, and assume that all fermented foods are not created equal. But talk to us about fermented foods in the gut.
Do we need to eat fermented foods? What is a fermented food? And where are we getting it wrong, and what should we be doing about this? Because I think people intuitively know this. Like grandma used to make this weird sauerkraut that stunk.
Quick side thing, our friend Kate Shanahan, who wrote Deep Nutrition, one of my favorite books. I mean, she went around the world and studied every single culture, and like one of the through lines through every culture's, ancestral diet was a fermented food.
So we absolutely should be eating fermented foods first and foremost. Every single culture, our body was like created to accept bacteria from foods. And it's very magical how, you kill bacteria if you eat it. So if you ate something that was spoiled, your body has to know to kill that bacteria, but then it knows to let the bacteria from a fermented food in. It's so crazy that it knows how to do that. But it does do that, and it does it very well. And then when you eat a fermented food, it goes to your gut, to your colon, where there's other friends that it can find. And it's an absolutely amazing way to both improve health and mental health, and long term well being as well. So, the second question is, yes, there's different levels of fermentation. For example, yogurt is great, but kefir is better. And then, kombucha is great, but you have to worry about which kombucha it is and how much sugar it has. So there's all these different types of fermented food. But I would say for the most people, including myself, getting fermented foods into your regular diet is something that will be a game changer.
You go ahead, Jay.
No, go ahead.
You
We're both
talk.
so excited.
I know.
We normally don't interrupt each other so much, but we're excited.
One of the things I think that people come to your work for is that they don't feel good. They don't feel energetic. They feel lethargic. And you're hinting at this combination systems approach, and the gut is part of that. I think you describe it as a energy trifecta. Can you explain a little bit about so if someone's coming, they're like, I just feel tired and sluggish. What do I do? Right? All I do is eat antibiotics all day long and 5-hour energy drinks, and it's not working. So what is the energy trifecta, and where does someone begin to think about having an immune system that works better and doing that through foods?
Yeah, I think that's such an amazing question because I don't think there's most people don't make the connection between energy and their food, except when it comes to caffeine. Yes, you know that. If you drink a Bang or a 5-hour energy, you're gonna feel energetic for a couple of hours and then you crash, right? But we don't really talk about eating for energy in terms of gut health and changing your gut microbiome. And so it's a concept coming from that journal club that I kind of talked to you about. That was the first time I realized that the gut, the immune system, the brain and the hormones, the gut is constantly talking to all of the systems of your body. It's making decisions about what hormones to release, what immune cells to send, and what signals to send to the brain, right?
Do we understand? We have a good
are-
understanding of what the gut does yet? I mean, do we nail that down?
No, we only know there's 5 right now. There's 5 different ways that it communicates with the rest of the body, to the brain and the rest of the body. But we believe that there's even more. So you can send hormones. So the gut bacteria will send hormones through. The gut bacteria will send these things called short chain fatty acids. They'll send then they'll send nervous system signals. And then there's a bunch of ways that they'll communicate. And that's how you feel energized. Because when, for example, say you eat an orange, and your gut bacteria, once it gets the remnants of that orange gets to your gut bacteria, the gut bacteria says, oh, that looks like an orange. Amazing. I'm going to extract what I need from it. Let me tell the immune system it's all good. Nothing to worry about here. And then it's going to send a signal to the brain. Like eating citrus actually is a way to boost your mood. And so it sends, it releases dopamine and endorphins. And then your brain knows oh, okay, time to be happy and time to be energized. And literally that's what happens. And then on the contrast, since we picked on Doritos already, I'll pick it up on them again. You eat a Dorito and your gut bacteria is like, what the hell is this? Let me call in a bunch of immune cells to figure out what that is. So that's called inflammation, because now your immune cells are trying to figure out what this thing is. Send signals to your brain hey, we have something here that we don't even recognize as food. And your brain is okay, that's why ultra processed food, if you eat a lot of them, your brain feels tired and sad. And you're basically telling your hormones to release cortisol because there's an inflammation response here. And so literally, I mean, it's not that simple, but it's kind of is that simple that, when you're eating food, it is creating a cascade of events to your brain and to your hormones and to your immune system.
So I am all of these connections between the gut and the rest of the body are like fascinating and amazing, and I really get the sense that we're like in like kindergarten when it comes to understanding the gut. That there's so much more to learn.
Yes.
And you've talked about this a little bit already, but I'd love for you to talk even more about this gut brain connection, because I've heard you on someone else's podcast say the phrase "food creates mood," which I love that.
Yes.
And could you just talk a little bit more about that? Because I think we are in a phase, especially, we share having teenage kids, and, we are constantly talking about how, from a mental health perspective, kids aren't doing well, adults aren't doing well. Generally speaking, from a mental health perspective, we're sort of struggling as a society. And so I really sort of grabbed a hold of this food creates mood. So where are we in the science between this, gut brain connection? And then how can we improve this?
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. We're in the infancy of learning exactly we understand something about the gut and the microbiome, but we really don't know yet how to use that to our advantage. It's not as easy as just taking a probiotic per se. Think about the gut microbiome, the microbes that live in your gut, like your kids. They're little kids. They are they are hungry. They need sunlight. They love exercise. They are sensitive. They like and dislike things. And so it's really interesting because we never think about this entire trillions, not even billions, trillions of little kids that are creating our reality that live in our gut. So, for example, when you exercise, your kids love that. They actually dance. Like literally, if you looked inside, they would be dancing, and they create compounds themselves called short chain fatty acids. And these are the ones that go to your brain and make you feel good and go all over your body to be anti inflammatory. And similarly, food does the same thing. They want certain foods. They love fiber. They love probiotic foods. They love polyphenols. Polyphenols are these chemicals that are in like green tea, chocolate, blueberries. And so, for example, blueberries is a great example. Blueberries have been shown to improve mood and cognition even within one dose of blueberries. And so you can see that food literally can impact your mood in as little as an hour um, of eating it, because you're feeding the gut bacteria that love that food, and then they'll respond and they'll create all these neurotransmitters. That's one of the 5 ways it communicates with the brain. And the brain responds to that and says, like, all right, yeah, let's be happy. Like they're saying, let's be happy. And so the dopamine levels in the gut correlate with the dopamine levels in the brain. And so you can literally say, when you're eating the right diet, you can actually create a situation where you're happier.
So we had this really interesting researcher on our podcast who researches the power of nature. And he and his team have actually created a program where they teach physicians how to actually physically prescribe going out in nature to their patients, which we loved, of course. Are we at the point now with sort of mental health diagnoses where we or physicians could literally prescribe food, exercise, sunlight? I mean, it seems obvious to us, but sometimes there seems to be a disconnect, right? There's sort of this internetosphere saying you've got to eat well and go outside and do these things. And then there's sort of the physicianosphere. And are we at the point from a research and understanding perspective where like a realistic, actual prescription given to someone who has, you name it, mental health challenge is, healing your gut, eating good food,
Like I go
going
to
outside,
Walgreens to
exercise.
get fermented like
Yeah, like
kimchi.
you go to Walgreens to, I mean, are
Yeah.
we at that point where the research would support that?
Yeah, that we are. But the reality is, in most parts of America, we are still really struggling with getting that message. And also, like, life is hard. People are, working really long hours, have long commutes, have lots of responsibilities, have a lot of financial constraints. And so, what I think is what got exposed during COVID, really, time is that America in general is really not. Americans are not doing the right things, basic things for their health for many reasons. But it's mostly, I believe that it's a combination of not knowing, not having the time, energy, resources, not getting the guidance from the places that we would traditionally get guidance, like schools aren't really emphasizing it anymore, doctors aren't really emphasizing it anymore, and we're still, even in today's world, even the post-COVID world, we're still in a place where we are starting to know that this is good for us, but it's still not kind of creeped into our culture. Like, this is, I think it's really crazy for me when I go to the clinics, especially when outside of like the major big cities, and I see what people are really talking about and struggling with. And it's literally the basics, like really not even realizing what healthy food is, what a healthy workout schedule could look like, because nobody in their community is telling them. They've never learned it. They're the leaders in their spaces are not talking about it. And it's always shocking to me because I'm like, shouldn't this just be like common knowledge to everyone? But it's really a very deep systemic issue that I don't think has just like one solution. I think there's a few.
This episode of the Ready State podcast is brought to you by Momentous. And what we want to talk about today is the beauty of a vitamin D supplement.
So I think it's useful for people to sort of separate out like supplements, because you think of the crazy bodybuilders with the tackle box taking 300 things. And you and I are in the category that a supplement is really a food. We're trying to say, hey, like our family, for example, we don't eat a lot of fish. We are fish averse. Our children are like, there was a
No,
fish
thank
near
you.
here.
Yeah.
So we have to take an omega-3. And that's just to make up for the fact that we're not eating enough food, right? Fish food. One of the things that we're seeing is that people do not get enough sunlight and are having low vitamin D levels. How do I know? You can test that.
Yeah, I mean, this is a relatively easy test to get. And, most primary care physicians
No
will
problem.
order this for you. So this is actually something where you can immediately see the positive effect. So you can get your vitamin D tested. And if you're low, it's simple, small little supplement you can take once a day that can have a huge impact on your vitamin D levels.
We were just talking to a physician who happens to be an expert in gut health, and it turns out vitamin D is part of that process too. I think sometimes we like to think vitamin D, bones, and you're like, weird prohormone, body's a big complicated system. This little vitamin D it goes a long, long way towards solving a whole lot of problems, especially if you're a little deficient. And, chances are you're not getting enough sunlight. We know because we know.
That's what the data shows.
Right? And number two, probably not eating enough oily fish, if I'm being frank.
And like every other Momentous product, their vitamin D is NSF certified.
Yeah, this is crucial.
Which means, when you put this thing in your mouth, you're actually getting vitamin D, a high quality vitamin D at that.
Yeah.
And so it's actually going to do what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I just want to expand on that a little bit because more and more research is coming out that the supplements you're getting on Amazon or what's the word? Crap.
Yeah.
And they
are not what they say they are.
They're not what they're saying they are. And anyone, if you're taking any vitamin, any food-like supplement to support nutrition health, has to be NSF. And if it's not NSF, do not buy it. Even if you're like, I'm saving $1, it's not worth it. So get that NSF, get that vitamin D. If you are having a child who's growing, chances are they're probably not getting enough vitamin D. You can, as an adult, go get your vitamin D checked and then supplement if you need to. But we just feel like this is one of the essentials that we put in with our children for us.
True fact.
If you want to learn more, go to livemomentous.com/TRS and use code TRS and save up to 35% at checkout.
This episode of the Ready State podcast is brought to you by LMNT.
Oftentimes you hear us talking about the need for electrolytes because we're replenishing sodium.
And doing so with the tastiest, yummiest beverage out there
You're not
called
wrong.
Element.
You're not wrong. We've talked about how it changes my drinking behavior because I'm actually
We've
consuming a
talked about
tasty
the
beverage.
afternoon bump.
That's right. I want to talk about a practice that I think would change how you feel during the day, and that's called salty morning.
I like it. So what's salty morning?
So what I propose to people is to wake up, and the first thing you need to do in the morning is chug some water with an element. And you don't have to commit to the whole thing, the whole
You could just
sachet.
do like a half a sachet.
But fill up a water, half a sachet, before you have coffee. Start to plug that water in. You have not had water for many, 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 many hours. If you didn't drink anything all day long, guess what? You'd feel like trash,
That is true.
right? You're like, I don't feel very good. What's
Yeah,
that?
but I think it's easy, and it's a problem, and you and I fall into this problem, and that is to just wake up and drink a couple cups of coffee and be like, it's fine.
It's fine.
There's water in coffee.
That's right. I'm not drinking enough coffee. So what you're telling me is I should drink more coffee? No. Instead, what you're saying is,
You
hey,
can drink more coffee, but I think if you just start your day with a little salty element water,
so tasty.
so tasty, so easy to just chug a glass. You don't even need to have a whole sachet. You can like make it last over 2 days.
Yeah.
And then enjoy all the coffee you want.
It's been such a game changer that with some of the teams I work with, when I'm in the morning before games, I walk around and hand out sachets. Hey, sachet. And our athletes are having an element with breakfast. And we're seeing that as part of our pregame routine because the hydration is such a big deal. And being able to unload that plus electrolytes, game changer.
And it's just easy to chug down a glass of it because it tastes so good.
Yeah,
and
you're
it's
not,
just
you're not
easy,
drinking that,
easy.
that pedestrian water like that.
No one wants to drink plain
that.
water.
Look, right now, if you order through our link, you can get a free sample pack of Element's most popular drink flavors. And if you want to party in your mouth, what should we do, Jay?
Try sparkling.
Yeah, the sparkling element's ridiculous. Go to drinklmnt.com/TRS. Say it, Jay.
We literally drink it every day. Yeah, it's complicated.
I turned 50 last year. I had my first colonoscopy. So fun. I recommend it for everyone.
It's 45 now, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
So I put it off for 5 years.
You were way behind.
It was the easiest. I just want to tell everyone it was the easiest thing you do. You just basically go to sleep and then you wake up and you're like,
Yeah, drive home now.
yeah, drive home. Or have your wife drive you home. I always chat up all the physicians that I'm working with, right? And one of the things that this physician had told me was that they were seeing higher incidences of colorectal cancer in much younger people, and sort of was shocking because I'm always like, what are you working on? What are you seeing? I'm going to silo that for a second. Recently on a podcast, I said, hey, Juliet and I really advocate for trying to get much more roughage in your diet. Like we were like, hey, we follow this a friend's guideline, which is an objective measure of trying to eat 800 grams of fruits and vegetables every day. And part of that is you need the polyphenols, as you said, you need the micronutrients just to have connective tissue and your brain works. But you also need the fiber. And someone on the internet did a palm slapping face to that comment. And I asked him, I'm like, what are you don't believe in fiber? And he's, got very defensive and he was like, fiber is overrated. It's bullshit. It seems to me that there's some connection here between we need some fiber and we're not getting enough fiber and we're starting to see weird colon diseases.
Yeah, I mean,
diseases.
isn't it 85% of Americans do not eat enough fiber? I think that's the number.
Yeah.
Is there a number?
I think it's 95%.
Oh, only
Oh,
95.
95.
Oh,
Okay,
perfect,
okay.
perfect. So my Frappuccino doesn't have a lot of fiber is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Can you give me a number and then tell me how to think about that? Because it seems to me that seems one of the underpinnings of having a healthy gut and making sure that my body's getting what it needs is this fiber piece. But when I think of fiber, I just think of Metamucil. Can you help me just, I'm not drinking Metamucil every day. So help me understand that.
So I have a mnemonic that I give called 30-33.
30-33.
Yes, 30 grams of protein in your first meal as kind of a ballpark figure for your first meal. 30 grams of fiber throughout the day. That's about your 800 grams. I think that pretty much translates into 30 grams. And then 3 probiotic foods every single day. So it could be a spoon of kimchi. It could be a little cup of yogurt. It can be, raw apple cider vinegar and water. It can be kefir. It can be kimchi, sauerkraut, all of those things, natto, any of those things count for your three.
Did you say natto?
probiotic
Shame
foods.
on you.
Yeah,
What is natto?
Go ahead. It's not
it
tasty.
is. It's so it's an acquired.
That's very nice of you. All fermented foods are friends of the body. I will pass on the
Yes.
natto.
Okay, but if you whip it, have you watched TikTok about how to whip it with the rice?
No, I have trained my
Okay.
algorithm not to do that.
He receives no natto content.
Yes, I think you should revisit the TikTok viral way of whipping your rice with it. It actually, I mean, I would say that it's much better that way, and it's kind of fun to just try it. It's some new different foods.
So 30,
But
33. I think this is
yes.
like, don't take this the wrong way. I'm going to give you credit for it a million times, but I'm going to tell people this. We have been hammering on trying to get people to eat protein for breakfast. And
Yes.
I feel like we've been hammering on getting enough fiber. But I think we've always said, for probiotic foods, but this is very specific.
Yeah,
and
people need
it didn't seem like you said very much.
Yeah,
Like,
people
that's
need
really
an instruction.
reasonable.
I mean, that's what we've realized is that like you could stop anybody on the street and ask them if they're supposed to eat fruits and vegetables, and like pretty much everybody knows that. Even the least nutrition educated amongst us, I think probably deep down know they should eat them. But what people need to know is how much. And this is so helpful.
And I think what happens for the way I tell people to think about this is that concentrate on doing the first part of the 30-33 first. Like if you can just start eating 30 grams of protein your first meal, just start with that. Start getting your feet wet with that. You're going to start to have better energy, less cravings, better workouts, and then start to incorporate the 30 grams of fiber. That's kind of level 2. And then the level 3, the complete thing, is the 3 probiotic foods. Because for me, I felt like when I started to do this 30-33, I felt like different within a week. And everyone I talk to says the same thing. They're like, wow, within a week, I felt like I was like a different person because your gut bacteria changes really fast. Like this whole kids situation, like they can add and subtract and change within like 3 days. You can feel
Wow.
a different way, which is very empowering.
So I'd love to slightly switch gears, although it's not that much. I would love to talk to you about the difference between hunger, appetite, and cravings, if you would.
Yes. All right. So I think the difference between hunger and cravings, we can make it completely obvious when you think about your favorite desserts or snacks. That think about that donut or dessert that you would drive across town. You would get in your car, drive across town to go get that. And everybody can think of something like that they love so much that if it was available today somewhere, you would go and get that. That is a craving because that is driven by dopamine, and dopamine drives us to take action. So if you are like, that's why dopamine is what's in, it makes sense that dopamine is what's involved with alcoholism, with smoking. It's the dopamine the dopamine pathway is super strong. And it's like, I think I know when I have a baked good in my kitchen, a healthy, especially when it's healthy, it's especially bad when it's healthy because I will have intrusive thoughts. Like I will be doing something else and I'll be like, I kind of want more of that thing, or I want to have that. And while it's
Don't
in
look
your
at me,
house,
Juliet.
keep thinking about is there something like that in your life? Because that's how you identify a craving. Is like cravings are dopamine pathway. They're a lot different than hunger. Hunger is cyclical reminder to eat to keep you alive, and and often we have hunger patterns that are set through circadian rhythms, and so every day at the same time you kind of get hungry as a reminder to eat. But as you kind of figured out, you probably figured out, and I figured out, if you kind of let that hunger pass, it's not like you died. It's just, it came and it went. And then you get hungry again at your next hunger period. And it's a cyclical thing. It's built inside of you to keep you alive. But it isn't as strong as cravings. And Same thing with appetite. Appetite is something that is happening in your brain, and is not necessarily driven by the dopamine system. And so I talk a lot about cravings because that is the thing that the dopamine pathway is such a strong pathway that it can be so positive and it can be so negative. So it can be so positive because dopamine pathway is also the one that drives us to do exciting and hard things and move ourselves forward in our lives and our careers, and at the gym and all of those things. And but there's also a cravings side of dopamine, which is often what we deal with processed, ultra processed foods, with alcohol, with soda, with candy, because our body, when you eat an ultra processed snack, donut, cake, your brain is going to be flooded with dopamine. And now,
Can I
when
get
you
an
don't
amen?
have that,
Yeah.
I am a dopamine surfer if I needed to be.
yeah, and I think that's a lot of us can recognize the good and the bad, right? Like if you love that feeling, the dopamine release. My husband is the same way. I think a lot of people live on that feeling of like the dopamine release, and it's a great thing. It can make you, probably is a reason you're so successful in your life, because it also drives you to do behaviors that are positive, that have you release dopamine. And so that, when you understand it that way, you're like, wow, like I know now which foods, which things I eat out of hunger and which things I'm eating out of cravings, or even just doing out of cravings. And you can modify your life accordingly.
Let me jump in here. One of the through line narratives of your work is that we should be paying attention to our circadian rhythms.
Yes.
That turns out we have been diurnal human beings forever. There's a day and a night. There hasn't ever been a human being without a day and the night. This is
Yes.
important to understand fundamentally of our biology, of our repair, how our brains through the lymphatic system wash out waste product. Like the whole thing is based on day night. How might we harness that? Or what do you think we're missing a little bit in terms of gut health, nutrition? Because you really are pointing out that we can harness that tech. And I mean, the fact that our brains and bodies are on this cycle naturally, help us understand that a little bit. Because I think that's very confusing for people. Besides, yeah, you should sleep.
My night shift friends and colleagues hate when I say this, but we cannot shift our circadian rhythms to be night owls, no matter what we try to do. Like, even if you worked your entire life as a night shift nurse, your body does not work on nights. We are just not nocturnal animals, and we can't turn into them, even if we try to train our bodies. What that means is, night shift workers, we know that they have higher rates of disease, higher rates of death, higher rates of mental health issues. Like, it's just a fact that we need day and night to be day and night. And I know our teenagers don't believe that, but there is a day. And honestly, teenagers do have a shifted circadian rhythm. So give them, I always tell parents, give your teenagers a little leeway, because for some reason, during puberty, and there must be a, uh, you know, ancient reason for this, but teenagers have a shifted circadian rhythms. They are shifted about 2 hours. And so you won't find a lot of teenagers getting up at 6 a.m. or 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. the way you find adults. Their circadian rhythms are just a little bit shifted. And then it kind of normalizes once you get to adulthood. It has something to do with hormones. But adult circadian rhythms need day and night to know what to do. 80% of our body's processes work on a circadian pattern.
80%.
Our hormones, 80%. Our hormones, our heartbeat, like everything that's happening is timed day and night. So that's why, for example, and you may have seen this research, I just posted about it actually yesterday. There's a big body of research that's looking at circadian rhythm and exercise timing. for example. And of course, you should exercise when you can exercise. We never want to stop anyone from exercising. But there are some real benefits to moving your body early in the day. And like uh, even more so than just a calorie burn. There's some metabolic, brain, um, and cardiovascular benefits from doing movement, some kind of movement, early part of the day. We were just meant to move. We're meant to see the sun. We were meant to eat um, at in the like in the daytime hours, like sun, and we were meant to sleep fast, recover in the nighttime hours. That's just how we've been doing it. We've been programmed for thousands of years, and so if you kind of follow that, even if it's not exact, like sundown, sun up, all that stuff, but if you follow that loosely, many things, including your mood and energy, will improve. So, for example, having a set schedule for your sleep time, having a set schedule for your wake time, and having that happen during the daylight hours, especially the early part of the day for exercise and for food. I always talk about not fasting, if possible, all day long. We are meant to be eating during the day, like pre if you had to have a number, it would like be pre 8 o'clock p.m. We're because around 8 o'clock, for most people, their melatonin is starting to really rise and send signals to the gut, to the pancreas, to our hormones, like, hey, it's time to get ready for bed. You should turn down the insulin production, you should turn down the digestive enzyme production, you should turn down, all of the digestive processes. So that person who's eating a huge meal, the biggest meal of the day at midnight, is really shortchanging that process.
So a company like, no shade, everyone, sorry, Insomnia Cookies seems
Yeah.
like not
Maybe that's
not the best thing for me.
Yeah, it's not the best thing for the college kids
Highly
among us.
processed sugar in the middle of the night when I'm not sleeping. I love it. It's
Yeah.
perfect recipe.
The problem is we're not supposed to, I would say, have all night access to food and drinks. We are not, our bodies are not built for that. And so for us, like, if we understand that, we can actually optimize our hormonal function and our digestive function and our brain, if we kind of follow the rough rules of day and night. And it's so much so that the same meal that you would eat, pre 8 p.m. and you're now eating at 2 a.m. in the morning, you're going to have a more disrupted insulin response, a higher blood sugar spike. You will have more digestive issues. I mean, I think we knew that intuitively, but it's like the science is pretty clear.
And you're saying I can't train myself into a midnight snack because I
You can't train yourself into insomnia cookies, baby.
I love it.
Okay, so I have an appetite question, if I may.
Yeah.
And first, I'll start it with a story. That is that my friend Mags and I went out to dinner a few years ago. And this, by the way, for context, is like pre-GLP-1s exploding everywhere, where everyone was talking about appetite. And we just went to a burger place, like a local kind of fancy burger place. And our other friend, who is naturally very slender woman, just ate half of her burger. And Mags and I, of course, ate our entire burger. And we couldn't stop talking about how, like, there'd never been a time in our lifelong memory where we ate half a burger and felt full. And we continue to talk about it, and we still joke about it to this day, like, who eats half of a burger? And then, of course, all this talk about appetite has really come to the forefront, because of GLP-1s.
Now everybody's eating half a burger.
Everyone's eating half a burger, but is appetite different for different people? Is there research on this? Like, is there a genetic component? Like, am I just born to feel happier eating more and being full, and some people
I eat
aren't?
smaller meals, so.
Yeah.
And
So what?
Sometimes it's a problem because I end up under calories because I get full and I'm kind of like, I'm done.
Yeah. Like, is appetite genetic, or do our appetites
it's also
differ?
learned.
Yeah.
It's a combination, just like anything. It's also learned, right? Were you rewarded? I remember a friend in high school telling me that every time something good happened to her, she had to have like a big pasta meal with like a dessert, because that's her parents. Anytime anything good happened, they would celebrate with a big pasta meal and like cake or something at the end. It was like this traditional Italian meal. And she was saying how she couldn't break out of that. It's such a learned behavior. And same
Yeah.
thing with finishing your plate. Like, it's a learned behavior that you've equated with being full.
Yeah.
And so there's a combination of genetics, but a lot of learn. That's why people try to exploit that, right? They try to give you blue colors because people tend to eat more when there's, and then they give you huge containers because you'll consume more. Like, it's only $1 more to get the extra large. There's all these like ways to play into the psyche of a person to get them to eat more, order more. So because a lot of this is a learned behavior, it's not necessarily. That's why GLPs are so disruptive, because all of this research that's gone into how to make food more appetizing, how to make you finish your meal, how to make you order more. There we have like a bazillion lab science papers, and now these companies are like, oh crap, like people are not eating like they used to.
Yeah, the big bag of blue Doritos just doesn't have the same appeal for me. I would be remiss. I have teenage daughters. There is a lot of skincare that goes on in our life.
Oh, yes.
You don't even know where I'm going yet. I also am around a lot of other teenagers because of the world I'm in, and there's a lot of skincare that goes on with them. Is there a connection between not my adult acne, which is unfair, but
Yeah, that is like one of the most unfair things.
I
that can
had
happen.
really gnarly
I know.
acne in high school. I had bacne, you're welcome. And I'm pretty sure there was a direct correlation between my less than stellar 1980s diet. But is there a connection, and how would I begin to talk about that connection between gut and skin, especially if acne?
Yeah.
Can I improve my acne game by thinking differently about my foods? And this is for all the parents who have a teenager out there.
Yeah. I mean, that story that I told about your gut, like the kids in your gut microbiome kind of calling over their friends, their immune cell friends, that's inflammation, right? So when you have inflammation in your body, in your gut, it goes all over your body. And one of the signs is inflammatory acne. Another sign may be feeling tired. Another sign may be having gut issues. So your food absolutely impacts your skin. And I think we all know that. Like, we see these people in today's world getting all kinds of procedures and Botox, and they have all the skincare and the makeup. But if they're eating a crappy diet and they're like not exercising and not sleeping, it's like shows, like you can kind of see people's inflammation often show up on their skin in different ways. And so absolutely there's a connection. It is not direct connection though. It's not like someone will have a full face of acne and then you just change their diet and then all of a sudden they have a clear skin. It's not. I wish it was like, that simple. There's so many different things that play on it. There's hormonal factors, there's genetics. Genetics plays into like whether your dad had acne
Thanks, Dad.
at that tea. Yeah. And then what you do to your kids, like that's what you pass down. So I think that absolutely there's a skin food connection. And we now know more and more about the skin food connection. For example, there was a study that just showed that having adequate vitamin D levels is associated with anti-aging your skin and your body. So like if you're someone who's into, doing all the things you could do to anti-age, like you should be checking your vitamin D levels and optimizing them through diet and supplementation. That's one of the ways. Omega-3 fatty acids is another thing that is directly correlated with better brain health, but also better skin health. And so these are the things that we can see that there's direct connections between your skin and your gut. And the last thing is your skin has a microbiome, and we shouldn't be using, I thought what you were going to get at is like, we're using all these scrubs and toners and like all these like skincare products, and it's killing the natural
Doctor, I
microbiome
have
that
no
lives on
idea
our
what you're
skin.
talking about. I
Yeah, I
wash
mean,
my
our
face
daughter came home last
with a
night
bar
and
of
had
soap every 3
been
days.
to Sephora, and she was explaining to us her like 8-part skincare routine,
Yes.
and we're first of all like, you're 20, so you look perfect.
Yes.
Number one,
She does.
and
Yeah.
She's
so I
amazing
think that
skin.
was what was you inspired the 8. We heard the 8-part skincare routine.
Yeah, and it's like you want to preserve the bacteria that's on your skin. Is actually protecting you from a lot of inflammation, and you'll see a lot of kids who are overusing products. Their skin is broken out and angry because we need that good gut bacteria. Just like we have good gut bacteria, we have good skin bacteria.
I just want to go on record as saying there was a phase in high school where the Irish Spring would make my skin so dry that I could like crack my face.
Yeah.
And it's
Oh, that
probably
That wasn't good. Yeah, that
wasn't-
was just like chemicals stripping off everything.
I
Wait,
wanna
can I
go-
ask one?
Yeah, of
I got one.
course. Listen to us. Like we
got one.
never
I got
like
one.
you are our like most popular friend.
Yes,
Asking
I
for a
love
friend.
it.
I feel like I'm about to be 1,000 years old by asking this question, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it. And then it's probably going to reveal a little bit of my bias. But, Kelly and I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and no one was allergic to anything. Literally. Like,
Yes.
definitely, there was no kid that was allergic to a nut. Nobody was allergic to anything. And I don't really think that it was a matter of us not diagnosing them, because if kids were going into anaphylaxis, like, we obviously would have known. So it's
You
like
would know.
nobody was, going to the ER during elementary
You're
school.
giving some anecdotal experience right now.
That I know that's anecdotal, but then also what?
But it's true. It's actually
What-
true. It's been doubling. Yeah, food allergies are rapidly increasing.
And so I want to get to my question, but then the second thing is I will say that Kelly and I became a little bit food sensitive. There was food sensitivity skeptical because in the early days we did one of those food sensitivity tests, and we did some tests, and then we met online with a doctor. This was probably in like 2010, and I get on, and there's like a red check basically next to all food for me, and
Yeah.
and she basically was like, you're sensitive to food. It was the end result. So I was like, all right, this basically is useless. Like, there's no way I'm sensitive or allergic to all food. So obviously this test is bogus.
Yeah.
Where are we? Because I do think, I do know and have read that, allergies to things like peanuts have been increasing over the years. What's going on there? My guess is there's a gut connection. And, you, among your many bona fides, you're also an allergist. So
Yeah.
you are really like well set up to tell us like where we are with allergies. How does this connect to the gut and ultra processed food and circadian rhythms and all the things we've been talking about?
Well, you're absolutely right. That food sensitivity test is useless. The sensitivity and specificity of food sensitivity testing, for the most part, is about 50%, meaning that you'd be better off flipping a coin, or just as good flipping a coin about whether you had a food sensitivity to taking a test.
No way. I eliminated pimentos and my life changed. It was one of the 4 things.
That was Kelly's one of his things.
baby carrots, pimentos. Boom. Gone. Got better.
That's hilarious. Yeah, often you'll see things popping up on food sensitivity testing that is because you're actually like that food and you eat that food and you have an IgG made to that food already. So that's why it's really not telling at all about what you're actually sensitive to. Unfortunately, the only way you can really test food sensitivities is through elimination diet. And so food sensitivities are totally different than food allergies. Food allergies is you can't even have a little bit of it. Even one bite will throw you into anaphylaxis or a huge allergic reaction, which affects multi-systems. Food allergies are absolutely rapidly increasing at rates like beyond what you would even imagine. I mean, it's like doubling every 20, 30 years or something like that. It's crazy. So what we are finding is that it's a matter of that same farm study that I told you about. Like, we're not seeing enough microbes. We're not seeing enough, we're not getting enough training to our immune system to be able to figure out what friend is and what foe is. And so there's lots of mistakes happening. And so so now everybody in the food allergy community, like literally what we learned is that you don't give nuts to babies. You just don't. If you give nuts to babies, they get food allergies. Now it's completely the opposite. Now, because of this microbiome knowledge, we're like, oh crap, we need to give nuts to babies so they can actually know that it's not a foreign object, a foreign thing. And so we want to try to eat nuts as early as possible so that they can get this immunity. So the way they found this out is that in Israel, one of the first baby teething snacks is called bombas. Bombas are like a puffed peanut snack. It's like a peanut buttery, like puff thing. And in Israel, there was like no peanut allergy. And they were like, how is that happening? And they were like, well, we don't really listen to the guidelines. We give all our babies this Bomba peanut snack. And so that literally shifted the entire world
Wow.
because then they were like, oh, wait, we're doing it wrong. We're not supposed to be holding back foods. We should be giving babies all the foods because that's actually helping them not have food allergies. And so just recently over the last like 5 to 10 years, we switched the advice to actually eat more foods exactly how we were thinking, like be exposed to everything you can be exposed to really early in life so that your immune system learns.
I can feel vindicated for taking peanut butter and just rubbing on my kids' gums all the time for fear that I wouldn't have peanut butter in my house.
Yeah.
We could talk to you all day because your nerdiness is world class. What are you nerding out about yourself right now? What has got you so fired up? What are you excited about? What are you thinking about?
Yeah.
You're sort of a polymath, which is a problem. But what are you
No, but
personally nerding out about?
I just love this gut brain connection because we talk so much about mindset and being happy. And like what I've realized, what I'm really excited about is that what you input, so through your food, through your activities, your sunlight, your sleep, what you input to your body and life is what you output to the world. So if you want to be more motivated, you want to be more energetic, you want to be in better shape, change your inputs so that they can change your outputs.
I love that.
I love it. And then is there one thing you're seeing out there on the internet right now? And you know, it's a crazy world, but I know you're deep in it. Some sort of trend or discussion around health, nutrition, allergies, fasting, you name it, that you're like, is bugging you.
Hot take.
I think there's a bunch of things that are totally crazy and wrong. But I think one of the big hot debates right now is intermittent fasting. And I think what happens is people are forgetting that for thousands and thousands of years, we just naturally intermittent fast. We didn't have refrigerators. We didn't have microwaves. We didn't have Uber Eats. We just stopped eating like at some point in the evening. And we woke up in the morning. We didn't just roll out of bed and have a bagel with cream cheese. Like it was probably like an hour or two, maybe more, before we actually ate something. And so I think this whole debate of like, is intermittent fasting good? Is it bad? Is it this? Is it that? And I'm like, you just have to realize that it's not good or bad. It's like how we were built to eat is we're not supposed to be eating 24 hours a day or even for 16 to 18 hours a day that like we are right now.
Yeah, it's almost like we need to just remove the intermittent word off the front of it, right? Because intermittent fasting is just like a like sort of internet buzzword almost at this point.
Yes.
But people and cultures have been fasting for thousands of years, as
Rest
you
and
well
digest.
know.
Break fast.
Yeah,
Rest
break
and digest.
fast. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not that, so to think of it not, I think where we really went wrong is to think of it as like a diet.
Yes.
Versus just like your body needs to rest and digest. This is what human beings do. They need to do. It's not like necessarily even something we need to be talking about on the internet. Like this is just what bodies are supposed to do.
I like that. Stop
Yeah,
eating by
there's
8.
this whole thing about like, I think there's a lot of debate on, are you supposed to eat first thing in the morning, like when you go, before you work out, or is it after you work out? And I'm like, no, it's honestly, I truly believe that it's when you feel like it. As long as you've had a good fast between the time you ate dinner and the time you wake up, then it's up to you how you want to fuel your body. It's like, there's advantages and disadvantages, but I don't think there's a blanket answer for people. I think that if you follow circadian rhythms, then you shouldn't eat late into the evening. If you stop eating 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed, and then have a good 12 plus hour fast till the next meal, you're good.
Love it. Dr. Shah, where can people find you on the internet and learn more about your work?
I am at Dr. Amy Shah on both Instagram and TikTok. I have a podcast, which you were such amazing guests on, called the Save Yourself Podcast. And my website is amymdwellness.com.
Yeah, and highly recommend a follow on social. You are fun and incorporate your family, and you're just reasonable and fun to watch. So highly recommend.
And currently, a couple great books. Tell us the name of your books, because I think it's always, I'm like, you write something on a blog. When you have a book, it starts to become a lot more real. Help us, remind us your name of your books.
Yes, I'm so effing tired and I'm so effing hungry. And there's a new one coming out in February 2026 that will be announced very soon.
No, it's very
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shah. It was so fun to have you on the Ready State.
We could have talked for hours. Thank you again for having me.